Hello.
Yeah, good evening, Rohini.
Good
Kavita,
evening.
can I
Yeah.
see Kavita here?
Hey, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening. Yes, a warm good evening to all the participants who have come for this webinar today. And on behalf of the host, I wish you all a happy International Nurses Day. And today's webinar is focusing on, it's our first webinar hosted by Mahatma Gandhi Medical College Research Institute, focusing on nursing voice to lead, challenges and opportunities. The basic idea of this was voice to lead. Nursing voice to lead is our basic theme for the International Nurses Day. And I thought we should focus all the nurses right from the bottom line to the top level administrators. So the point came to me was what can we be given to the topic. I found there is a lot of challenges and opportunities which everybody is facing now, right from the lower level nurses to the administrators. So with this, we thought we'll put up as how a nurse can voice out and how they can take up the leadership based on the current scenario and what are the existing opportunities and challenges they face. When we just looked into it, I found two things were propping up too much. Yes, one was the correlation of theory and practice. What the our nurses learn in the theory, whether they are able to bridge that gap into practice and take up their profession. Second one was taking care of themselves, both physically and mentally, and especially this very crucial times of as of COVID-19. So these two I found as the most important challenge. And the moment I thought out, the speakers came to my mind was who are there in our panel today, Dr. Rohini and Dr. Kavita. They'll be talking on Dr. Rohini on nursing education and practice bridging the gap, and Dr. Kavita on preparedness of frontline warriors, physical and psychological well-being. They both are very renowned speakers of professional excellence. Both of me are very much acquainted to me right from the beginning. And a few words about Dr. Rohini. She and I have joined the nursing career. We started a career together in 2000. She has graduated from Ramakrishna College of Nursing with a gold medal and 2 years of her service in Ramakrishna. Then she went to CMC Vellore for her post graduation, and she has now completed her PhD in Indian Nursing Council also. She has a very good seed of thought for nurses, and she looks into all the punitive issues, right? Punitive issues to the top issues. She looks into it very keenly and gives us a very good guidance too. This is what I have observed from there, and she is very person who has a very good clarity of knowledge in whatever she does. She just never does simply like that. Everything, she has a lot of clarity of knowledge in whatever she does. I welcome you, Dr. Rohini, for this session. Next, I would talk about Dr. Kavita. Again, she is also one of my best friend. We have worked together in our own university, and she started her career from 2004, and she has graduated from NIMHANS, Bangalore, a post-graduation, and she also has completed her PhD, and right now she is a doctorate. And she has also done a lot of good works in the field of mental health nursing. The moment you talk to her, you will be eased out of all your stressful feelings, and she's a very good stress buster, and shows us how we nurses can lead up a fruitful positive life, and she herself is an example also for it. And when we go to her for counseling, I have sent many students also for counseling, and many faculty also have gone. She's a very good counselor, and she's the apt person to talk about psychological well-being of nurses too. I welcome you, Dr. Kavita.
Thank you, ma'am.
So straightly we go on to the session now. The first session will be headed by Dr. Rohini, who will be talking about nursing education practice, bridging the gap. Please, madam.
I hope I am audible.
Yes, you're audible, ma'am.
Good evening to all. A very pleasant evening to all of you. Thank you very much, my dear friend, Professor Trippa Angelin, for those kind words. So today we'll just discuss in my session. I'm going to just discuss regarding bridging the gap between nursing education and nursing practice. Can I have the next slide? Next slide.
Yeah.
Can I have the next slide?
Yes.
So at the outset, I would like to wish all dear nurses a very happy Nurses Day of this year 2020. So we'll just move on to the content. Next slide, please. So the learning outcome of today's session is on completion of this program, on completion of this session, participants will be able to describe the causes of gap in nursing theory and practice, and then to explain the strategies how to overcome this gap in theory and practice from the level of a staff nurse. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so first let me tell you that nursing education and nursing practice, that is the previous slide, nursing education and nursing practice are actually two things which are actually inseparable. Just like I have put in that picture, okay, it is actually a double-sided plum, which is actually not separated from each other. That is how usually nursing education and nursing practice should be. Now a word on nursing education. So this was the picture of that plum where both are not separated. Now let's have a discussion on nursing education in the next slide. We all know that nursing education is the base for understanding the reality of nursing. Only when we have adequate knowledge, especially related to nursing education, only when we have knowledge, we can understand why a particular event is happening. For example, if I'm going to tell you that patients with acute respiratory distress syndrome, if these patients have to be connected to a mechanical ventilator, you will definitely know the reason why these patients are connected to ventilator. Because if somebody is going to ask you a question, why is oxygen support not enough? Just supplemental oxygen therapy, why? That is not sufficient. Why to connect this patient to a mechanical ventilator? Only when we have that base of the theory knowledge very thoroughly, we will be able to understand why this patient should be connected to a mechanical ventilator. That is just an example. Similarly, for everything, theory is the base. Only if we have adequate knowledge, we will be able to practice very skillfully. Now we'll go on to the next slide, that is nursing practice. Nursing practice, who is nursing? Who all are included in nursing practice? All dear nurses like you. That is a person who has completed a registered nurse or registered midwife, carrying out the roles, the responsibilities, the functions, and the activities to deliver an effective patient care comes under nursing practice. So now we understand nursing education is important, nursing practice is also important. In the next slide, we can see that nursing education is actually contributing to nursing practice. Okay, so in the next slide, please. In the next slide, we find that nursing education contributes to nursing practice. So we go on to the next slide again. So this is what actually is nursing education and nursing practice. Next slide. So actually nursing education is very important. Nursing practice is also very important. But in the reality, what we find is this. That is, we find that nursing education is standing on one side, nursing practice is standing on the other side, and there is a gap. In the beginning of the session, I told you that nursing education and nursing practice are inseparable. It should not be separated. But the harsh reality in our profession today is this picture, where we find that nursing education and nursing practice are separated, and there is a gap which is existing between them. We'll go on to the next slide. If you are going to analyze more regarding this, we find that as nursing education increases, the nursing practice decreases. It is a very harsh reality which we have to accept. That is, so as the nursing education is increasing, the nursing practice is found to decrease, and it is vice versa. We'll see that a little bit more clearly in the following slide, in the next slide. So in the next slide, we find that it is put in a continuum. Next slide, please.
Just a moment. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the slide which is saying that this gap can be, it can be explained with this continuum. What is the continuum? You find that nurse educators are, that red color arrow is there on one side, and clinical nurses are there on the other side of the continuum. But actually what we really want is the balance of both. What is the center? That is what actually ideally we nurses should be having. We should have a balance of both theory and skills. You find that nurse educators are very good because they have a very good theoretical knowledge. They have very good knowledge on research methodology. But if you're going to see the practice aspect, okay, when you go on to the other side of the continuum, that is in the clinical nurse, you find that they have very good skills. But what we want is a balance. Now coming on to this slide on nurse educators. Why nurse educators are having less skill? That is, they have more knowledge related to theory, they have more knowledge related to research, but their clinical skill is found to be very, very less. What is the reason? Because they are very busy in their academic life, maybe university, council, undergoing research activities. They have no time to go to the clinicals. And some of them, even when they go to the clinicals, they have lack of commitment to update their self skills in the clinical area. Also, the other reasons are they don't know what are the latest informations on the policies and the protocol. Genuinely, if you're going to see what are the latest protocols related to infection control in a NABH accredited hospital, how many nurse educators know about the latest protocols related to infection control unit is a very big question mark. So there are also some teachers who teach outdated knowledge. What is outdated knowledge? Actually, whatever they have studied during their student period or during their junior level as a teacher, the same thing they start to continue to teach to their students. So automatically what happens, the skill level starts to go down and only the knowledge level starts to increase. Now, in the next slide, please. So in the next slide, we find that, next slide, please. So in this slide, we find that why the staff nurses level of knowledge is decreasing. Clinical nurses are having very good skill, but what about knowledge aspect? It is that gap is there. What is the reason for this gap? Because nurses fail to update and apply their knowledge. Nurses, they are not following protocols or procedures. They are very much less interested in research activity. They are very much less interested in attending a continuing nursing education program. And there are few nurses who are not ready to change their behavior. Why they are not ready to change their behavior? Next slide, please. We can find that there are some nurses who are more used to their traditional procedures. That is, they want that procedure to be done in a traditional way. They are used to that habitual shortcut. Anything new when we tell, they are not ready to accept it. Same way, less organization support. Failure to prioritize theory. Failure to prioritize theory because they feel that theory is less important. Only practice is what is more important. There are most of the nurses, they feel stressed up, and due to that reason, they end up with less input on the theory. And there are also nurses who are found to be demotivated. Once they finish their student period, when they enroll themselves as staff nurses, they feel that it is enough. Whatever theory I have gained is enough. There is no need for me to continue with the education programs. So all these are the various reasons why teachers and staff nurses are found to contribute to this gap in nursing education and nursing practice. Can I have the next slide, please? So here we find there is one group of people who is standing between the teachers and between the staff nurses. That is our own students. These students are now utterly confused because with the difference between what they have learned and what they are seeing in practice. We teach them certain things, but when they come to the clinical area, they find a different practice and that ends up with confusion. Now we'll go on to the next slide. Next slide, please. Now, why to narrow this gap? So now we are very clear that there is a gap. Teachers have their own problems. staff nurses have their own problems. Now, so there is a gap between these educators and between these practicing nurses. So it is very important we have to narrow this gap. Can I have the previous slide? Next slide. Just one more enter. Okay, actually I had put a slide there. I don't know, it's not opening up. That is, let me tell you very plainly, if we don't have any theoretical knowledge, if staff nurses feel that they don't have any theoretical knowledge, what will happen is you will be considered only as doctors' handmaids. I am sorry to tell this, but that is the reality. Because whatever they tell you, you will be doing that. We don't have adequate knowledge to understand what they are trying to tell. They may explain certain things, but if our theoretical knowledge is not up to the mark of what a doctor is trying to explain to us, or what a medical profession is trying to, or health professionals are trying to explain to us, if you don't have adequate theory, okay, you will be considered only as a doctor's handmaid. But at the same time, skill is also very essential. If you don't have adequate skill, what is the problem is, it will end up with the credibility of your profession. They will ask you, then what nursing did you learn? What are you doing here? You don't know even to do this simple procedure. Okay, so such sort of questions will start to ask. Theory and skill is important. Can we go to the next slide? Can I have the next slide? Now, these are the expectations of nurses in 21st century. Expectations from nurses in 21st century is not only gaining knowledge and having adequate skill, but you are expected to fulfill all these roles. Be a team leader, be a resource manager, be a counselor, patient advocate, ABC, XYZ, the list keeps on going. So if we have to meet all these expectations in this 21st century, it is really very essential that we learn how to bridge that gap and how to step into the profession with a much more self-esteem of having gained adequate theoretical knowledge. Shall we go to the next slide? This is the most important part of this session. Can I have the next slide? How to narrow the gap. How to narrow the gap. It is very essential that this gap has to be narrowed. Otherwise, what will happen? Okay, we have already found that if you don't have theory or if you don't have practical skill, you will be not considered as a very professional in the discipline of nursing. So what are the recommendations? How to overcome this gap or how to bridge this gap? Okay, the main recommendation is if you're going to just type in the Google, just go to Google search engine and just type it, bridge nursing theory and nursing practice. You will find n number of studies which is being posted in the website. You will find that there are many models what we can implement to bridge this theory and practice. You also would be aware about this dual role. Dual role system usually in many hospitals now it is implemented, especially we have seen that in CMC Vellore, okay, where our own teachers who are the professors in the College of Nursing will be the departmental sister in the clinical area. So there are many models which can be used to bridge this gap between theory and practice. So the recommendations are big words: change the educational system, change the research system, implement localized clinical guidelines. Okay, so all these are too high for us, but still we should be aware that these are the recommendations for bridging the gap. Shall we go to the next slide? Tertiary education. Tertiary education is, now most of you who are attending this webinar, you would have found or you would have sensed the difference when you are working as staff nurse. That is, some of us who have been trained in a very good tertiary hospital, the competence and the autonomy level is found to be very high. Whereas there are some students, okay, who unfortunately they undergo this nursing training program in a place like, in some places where you don't even have a parent hospital. Okay, or parent hospital is there, but only 50 bedded or 100 bedded, a very compromised hospital. So now we know what is the difference. It is very important that students should be trained in a very good tertiary hospital or a tertiary setting so that competence and autonomy can be increased. So if you have any neighbor, if you have any friends, okay, who are willing to join for a nursing program, please try to tell them the importance of undergoing a training program at a tertiary level, or at a tertiary education should be, they should receive tertiary education. Shall we go to the next slide? Teaching learning approaches. Teaching learning approaches, there are so many teaching learning approaches which can be used even in the clinical area, even as staff nurses when you are working in your hospital. Okay, you can be a part, or you can participate in the various teaching learning activities which is being planned by nursing service department. But among the large number of approaches which is seen, it is found that simulation is one of the best method to bridge the theory and the practice. There are many research studies. I hope all of you know what is simulation. We have a lot of simulators, like for the sake of a delivery or even for a cannulation. So I believe that all of you know what is simulation. Simulation, problem-based learning, practice skill, all these are found to be a very good method to improve your theoretical knowledge as well as your clinical skill. Can we go to the next slide? The next slide, please. How to reduce the gap between education and practice. Now what I'm going to tell you is very individually. So far I was talking about big things. I told you that changing the healthcare system, change the research system, X, Y, Z. But now what I'm going to tell you is, I'm going to tell you very individually how you can bridge this gap. Number one, get research into practice. When I say get research into practice as a staff nurse, when we work, okay, in our department, for me, it may be too high to do an independent research. It may be difficult for me to carry out an independent research. But what I will suggest to you is, at least try to get involved in a research project, either as a data collector or help in data analysis. Be a part of evidence-based practice and try to think how you can improve your practice. Number two, what I want to tell you is, support nursing students posted in your clinical area. Support nursing students. See, when nursing students are coming to your department in the hospital, okay, please be little bit empathetic. At the same time, support them so that they will be able to acquire their skill. Why I am telling this is, today they are students. Tomorrow they are going to be the future staff nurses. So let us help them to develop adequate clinical skill. And you can also, have a very good interaction with them to find out what is the new thing which has come up related to this procedure or related to this protocol. We should always understand that knowledge is nothing but sharing. Okay, there should not be any ego in learning, whether it is a student or whether it is a nurse educator. We all should be having that ego-less feeling so that we'll be able to gain knowledge and be open to change. Can we go to the next slide? Previous slide, please. Continue nursing education. Shall I tell to you very personally? Okay, I just want to tell you very personally. Try to update with current knowledge and practice in the field. Only when you are updated with the current knowledge and the current skills and current practice, you will be able to provide quality care to your patients. So please get involved with continuing nursing education programs organized in your hospital or even in the nearby hospitals. Take time to just attend these continuing nursing educations and then, or even an in-service education program to improve your knowledge and skill. The next slide. Next slide, please. Now, this slide actually I have showed you before. Now, what is the differences? I told you that nurse educators are on one side, clinical nurses are on one side. But let us remember, everybody, all these people together we all are nursing. I am a nurse educator. You are a clinical nurse. But both of us are going to be only represented by the profession of nursing. So within our profession itself, we have people who are good in theory. We have people who are good in practicals. What we can do is we can empower each other. We can strengthen the nurse educators to develop clinical skills. We can strengthen the clinical nurses to gain adequate theoretical knowledge so that there will be a balance and we can, overcome that gap in this nursing education and practice. We'll move on to the next slide. Next slide, please. So in this, we find that another thing what we can do is, as I told you just now, clinical nurses as well as educators, both of us together can work and we can do a lot of wonders in the profession of nursing. We can co-organize workshops, seminar, conferences, and research. Let me tell you, I'm really very proud and I'm very happy that nursing superintendent, Professor Kripa Angelin, has taken an initiative to organize this webinar. Because here, what is happening here is we are co-organizing. This is a webinar organized for staff nurses, but the nurse educators are involved in giving lectures to the staff nurses. So this is how we can improve our knowledge. That is, we can organize workshops, seminars, conferences, and research. Shall we go to the next slide? Attachment of nurse educators. When teachers or when nursing teachers or nurse educators are coming to the hospital, please make sure that you just get along with them in a very friendly way. It is not that a nurse educator is superior or clinical nurse is superior. All of us are equal. We all are. All are doing a teamwork. That is, we are carrying on teamwork. Okay, so we can learn from each other. So just get attached to nurse educators so that you will be able to appreciate what are the later policies, procedures, and protocol. Shall we go to the next slide? So these are the, shall we go? Yeah. So these are the few tips what we can carry on in our everyday life so that individually we can try to narrow this gap. So before I conclude, I can say that we can narrow this gap if we all speak one common language. What should be that one common language? To help to give effective and a very good patient care. So only when all of us have the same thinking, same aspiration, and same goals in our profession, we can bridge this gap. The last slide. As a final thought, I would like to comment that. Shall we go to the next slide? Final thoughts. In nursing, as I told you before, I am just reminding, nursing theory and nursing practice are inseparable. But unfortunately, there is a gap between nursing theory and between nursing practice due to
Hello? Hello?
You should learn to update your theory practices. Try to get yourself enrolled for some seminars or workshops, etc. And even support the students and support the nurse educators when they are coming to the hospital. So the last slide. Can I have the last slide? Yes. So I thank you all for your patient listening for this webinar presentation. And I'm just reminding you that as a team, only when we work as a team in nursing, there will be definitely improvement in this profession. Otherwise, educators will work on one side, staff nurses will work on one side, and the gap is definitely not going to be bridged up. So let us try in our own means. Wherever you are planted, bloom wherever you are planted. If you are posted in the clinical area, bloom there. Show your adequate skills and try to improve your knowledge so that at least to some extent, we can bridge this gap between nursing education and nursing practice. So thank you all. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to participate in this webinar. Personally, I thank Professor Kripa Angelin for giving me an opportunity to participate in this webinar. Thank you.
Dr. Rohini, it was a very good deliberation from your side. You have told all those ways how the gaps are existing, how to bridge the gap, and what is the necessity to bridge the gap, because both sides all have to be benefited, and our ultimate goal is patient care. So we are here for patient care, and nursing prevails only on patient care. That was well said by you. And I think we'll have the questions at the last of the session when we have received 1 or 2 questions. I think we'll have it at the last. And right now we'll go on to the next session by Dr. Kavita, who will be talking about preparedness of patient, frontline warriors, physical and psychological well-being. Over to you, Dr. Kavita.
Jigmar Hospital.
Can you see the slides?
Yeah, we are able to see.
Yeah, okay. Good evening, one and all. Today is a Nurses Day. First of all, I would like to wish everyone a happy Nurses Day. And I thank Professor Kripa ma'am for giving me the opportunity to talk on the preparedness of frontline warriors, the physical and psychological well-being. Always I believe in self-love. Okay, before going to the topic, whoever, my friends and even my students, everybody knows that self-love is the first key to keep you physical and psychologically to keep you well. So let us go to the slides. The shortage of staff nurses are currently a major challenge faced by the healthcare system, not only in India, all over the world. As a consequence of the staff shortages, nurses often experience high level of stress, physical exhaustion, burnout, illness-related absenteeism. Nurses often work in the environment that are characterized by excessive workload. We never complain, but still, with a smiling faces, we work with the patients, but we carry all those things in our physical and mental health. And we have been paid poor remunerations, health risk posed by the patients, and exposures to the traumatic situation and impaired communication with the management. These are the challenges we face each and every day. Even today, you can see the Tamil Nadu nurses who have been recruited with the MRB. So those nurses are actually, even it's a Nurses Day, we need to be with a white heart, but everybody is putting a black badge and working today because of the poor remuneration. So these factors can compromise the psychological as well as physical well-being and the quality of the nursing care we provide. Problems like lifestyle diseases, psychological problems like lower self-esteem, post-traumatic stress disorders, and anxiety, depression, even burnout. So what are the challenges we face? The study has revealed that long working hours and overtime workload affects the physical and psychological well-being of the nurses. Nearly 90% of the nurses are with musculoskeletal disorders. 61% experience neck pain. Most recurrent pains in leg, knee, similarly upper and lower back issues. Even reported that they take 1 to 3 days, whereas 70% of nurses have taken leaves 4 to 6 days in the span of 2 months, and to manage the pain and indicate as evidence of productivity loss to the organization. Even before the onset of pandemic like COVID, India was suffering from shortage of 2 million nurses. It has been reported by our WHO. The nurse to patient ratio in India, 2.1 nurses per 1,000 population. So a study conducted by Godrej Interior Study has revealed that 88% of the nurses work for more than 8 to 10 hours a day, along with doing overtime at least twice or thrice a month. Similarly, 74% of the nurses stand more than 4 to 6 hours a day at a stretch and causing stress on their lower limbs, while 20% of nurses reported performing double shift duties at least twice a month. 26% of the nurses were requested to work on their off days twice a month, whereas 10% of nurses were called on duty more than twice a month on their off days. So, Madam Rogini was talking about bridging the gap between the education and the practice. So, I think these are the issues made many of the clinicians to leave clinics and join in the educational system, sometimes I believe. In response to the changed system and new responsibilities, the challenges faced by the nurses are increasing day by day. So what is the priority to address that? An efficient nursing workforce will make healthcare delivery system to be smoother, and the patient will feel safer and more secure, even the nurses. So study conducted in South Africa, they have told, the nurses have told some of the points which actually put them in a physical or psychologically suffering. So they have actually listed that one in the 5 different areas. The situation what they are looking for a more long hours, so results in exhaustion, which makes them to be susceptible of making mistakes while under duty. They have actually classified those issues into 5 categories. First category they have given like work environment. lack of hospital equipments and lack of basic hospital services which is available. And they have mentioned that high workload. So high workload in the way of shortage of nurses, shortage of doctors, multitasking, psychological and social implication of staff shortages. And emotionally taxing situation, they have said that death of a patient and informing the family about the deaths. We know that India, like countries, when you're going and informing something to a family member, if the family member believes that the patient is well and only the doctors and the nurses did something, then it's gone. Even the amid of pandemic, still we face so many healthcare workers are assaulted. So it is emotionally taxing as well as physically. Dealing with the severe poverty and emotionally taxing situation affect the nurses' psychological well-being too. Then they have fourth thing they have given that discontentment with management, means dissatisfaction with the financial reward which they receive and lack of acknowledgement. So they never received acknowledgement for their fruitful work. And psychological support services available to nurses, it's only in the papers. Lack of supportive services, alternative source of community support too. Because even during the COVID time, we felt that the healthcare workers were not given even the accommodation. Even some of the COVID healthcare workers have been thrown out of their accommodation, means their flats or else from their rented home, like that way. So as a psychiatric nurse, I spend much time in observing and listening. What is the calm surface appearance of nurses shows that underneath, many healthcare workers are barely keeping it together. They are anxious, they are afraid, and they are sleeping. They find themselves crying more than usual because they have so many problems. Then also with a smiling face, you need to go and work near to the patient and you take all the challenges. They suffer physical problems too. So signs of physical and emotional mental stress, if you include what are the day-to-day they face, physical signs. So many physical illnesses, even at the age of 40, even at the age of 45, they get so many physical disorders also. Compassion fatigue. All the caregivers will come and tell all their problems and everything, even the patient to the nurse. But one point of time, there will be a break point. So the nurse also will have a compassion fatigue. And cognitive difficulties and confusion, sometimes because of the overworkload or else because of the challenges which she is facing every day. Because of that, she may be having difficulty in thinking, recalling the instruction, disorientation, difficulty in problem solving, remembering instructions and making decisions. So she will be facing so many things with the cognitive difficulties also. And so once the cognitive difficulty has started for a nurse, then definitely it will be a problematic behavior. Maybe when she is scrubbing for a surgery, she may do some mistake. Start having some problematic behavior like poor hygiene and refusal to follow the orders or leave a scene like that way. And sometimes these things, if it is continuing for a period of time, what will happen means excessive negative feeling and social conflict may occur. Not only with the hospital staff or doctors or else with the other colleagues, even with the family life also, they will have so many problems. So how to overcome this? Every day we are facing these challenges. How to be mentally as well as physically healthy in this situation. So overall feeling of my friends, family, the co-workers, and the impending doom. So whenever you have some problems or anything, so everything you are putting it inside. So what is the what are we doing when we are celebrating a Nurses Day? Try to protect their physical and mental health before it is too late. So strategies to overcome the stress, or else you need to, you can say that what are the early interventions you can provide to protect their physical as well as mental health, or else how can we overcome the challenges which is faced by the nurses? The early intervention means preparing the staff for a job, associated challenges as well as false reassurances, giving a frank account of what staff may face. Means preparing a staff for job. So usually when we are recruiting somebody for a staff post or something, so we will be giving an induction training. So induction training itself, we are supposed to prepare the nurses how to handle a physical as well as the mental stress. And we should not give a false reassurance when you are becoming a staff, you will be having a flying colors like that way. What are the consequences also need to be given an account. And reflection for the healthcare staff to discuss the emotional and social challenges. We conduct everyday rounds. So during the rounds, we can have a reflection rounds also. That's called Stewart's rounds. So reflection of the healthcare staff. So the healthcare staff, we can ask, so what are your problems you are facing every day in the and they can discuss even the emotional and social challenges they are facing the day-to-day care. And reaching out of staff, especially the vulnerable staff. Some people, they always smile, carry a smile, the hidden thing we may not be knowing. So what we can do, reaching out of the staff. So the managerial level staffs can actually go near to a staff and ask what are their problems, or else if you feel the staff is so vulnerable, so we can actually bridge the vulnerability as well as they were becoming a problem for herself. And alternating shift system in rotation, working in a high pressure years, maybe a person who is working in OT, or a person who is working in a cath lab, or a person who is working in an emergency department. So they are actually always live in a stressful situation. So we can rotate the staffs for every 2 years or every 3 years. Like that way we can rotate and we can give them a very less workload wards. By that way we can reduce the pressure of their work area. And more training in terms of managing the psychological problems in patients also, because sometimes the patient behaving like a maniac, or else the patient is behaving like dysphoric. So that time the nurses also should be trained in a psychological way also. That's why even in curriculum the psychiatry has been added. Then also that some training is needed to manage even psychological problems of the patient. And even the staff should be provided with the security staff to manage maybe the patient who is very aggressive or uncooperative. Even to help them manage, they need to have some security staffs. Nowadays, even we healthcare professionals are demanding for some person as a security to manage the crowd like that way. And providing access and on-call rooms for staff who are working for long shifts. Yes, definitely it is a system that if the nurse is working for a long time, then they can be provided with the on-call rooms duty, and they can given a break system like that way. And well-defined and easily accessible protocols and expectations for staff. Yes, once the staff is joined for duty, we'll be telling her, you should go and work there, you should go and work there. Like that way, we'll be shifting them very often. So when we are shifting them very often, we are supposed to give the accessibility to the protocols, what is followed in a particular ward. And personalized staff welfare. Why I'm saying it's personalized staff welfare, each and every individual need is different. So it should be a personalized staff welfare than only a staff welfare. And staff development programs. So to empower the knowledge of the staff as well as their overall development, this can be the priority. Then support for general welfare of the staff, adequate staff in each area. So that the management should decide, but the voice should come from the upper level management. And well functioning equipment. Most of the time when the nurse is starting an IV line, sometimes the IV drip set is not working, or else a malfunctioning drip, or else the infusion set is not working, or else when you are opening a nebulizer, the nebulizer is not functioning. Like that frustrated situation make the situation work. So well functioning equipment can be given, accommodation facilities. So the nurse cannot travel for a long period of time and coming back like that. So accommodation facilities will help them in a general welfare. And timely medical checkups. We think that only the medical checkup is only for the people who are actually coming to our hospital like that. We know every year medical checkups for our nurses also, it's one of the priority to improve the physical and the psychological well-being. Sponsored holidays, it may be looking very funny, but sponsored holidays are actually one of the system which is boosted up in Western style, but still in Indian setup also the sponsored holidays by the hospital for the staffs. So this will improve their physical as well as mental well-being. And supplies of basic provisions such as snacks, water, phone chargers, toiletry for staffs, because many of the hospitals you can see that even they will not have a staff toilet. Designated break times for staff and leisure activities were coordinated for staff to promote relaxation when not at work. And staff recreation club, that is a one more good choice to overcome this physical, because when you have a recreation club, even you have some of the other talent other than your nursing this one, so definitely you can vent out in the staff recreation club. And encourage open discussion for disclosures of vulnerability. Why I'm repeating this again? Because discussion and the disclosure of vulnerability is help the nurse to overcome the physical as well as psychological burden. And provision of adequate information on stress management system, identification of burnout, available support services for the staff. Yes, when the nurse is working, or else the nurse is put up in an area where she is having more work, she is tend to have a burnout. So in that time, support services should be there. Psychological as well as physical support services need to be provided for the staff. And designated wellness champions. So we can identify some funny faces, I mean, the funny bone people who can actually handle the situation in a very effective way. Those people you can appoint as a contact of staff concern, because with all managers, the nurse may not be feeling comfortable to talk. So some of the managers, they have a very good communication abilities, so they can be a wellness champion and they can communicate with the other staffs. So that way the wellness initiative can be initiated, and support and the gratitude can be given. And promoting communication of challenges and success through a range of different forums. So we can have some forums, maybe a formal one as well as an informal one, to discuss and promote our communication. Whatever challenges we are facing in the clinical system can be emphasized in that one, and we can find a solution for that. And specialized psychological support for the staff. Dedicated hotlines are personal visits for staff experiencing psychological distress, and online courses to help medical staff manage common problems. Yes, even nurses, we will have some common problems. So we can have some online courses to overcome that. And peer support program also. Yes, definitely it will be helpful. The nurses should come together. If I have a problem, I should share my problems with others. The similar way, my problems may be helpful for the others who are actually facing the same problem. So by that way, vice versa, it will help each other to support. So what are the other intervention we can make? Means proper nutrition and get plenty of rest. Don't think the nurses are having a robotic body to work from 8 to 10 like that way. It is not like that. Proper nutrition should be the first priority, and the rest. Because why I'm saying rest, without a rest, our body will rest actually. So get plenty of rest. So even you have 8 hours duty, after duty, you quickly finish your physical work or else your personal works, and get adequate time to sleep. And reduce the physical tension through exercises and activity. We feel that the whole day, the 8 hours, I'm walking back of the patient, I'm going bed to bed. So like that way, we postpone our physical activities. Actually, it is wrong. We are supposed to do, even we are working and we are walking all through the day, then also we are supposed to do some physical exercises and activities. This will be for ourselves, it's for self. So through these exercises and through this activity, you are spending time with yourself. So it is actually beneficial for you, and breathing and relaxation techniques also beneficial. Spend quality time with friends, family, maybe read a book, watch a movie, or listen some music. It may be feeling that after a quite tiresome duty, why I should do all those things. No, it is not like that. If you're spending time with your family and friends and reading a book, it is not actually a spending time. Actually, you're investing time in your relaxation. And limit your caffeine and alcohol intake. I think Indian nurses, we may not take, but Indian nursing brothers may have this habit. So in that way, I'm telling. So caffeine intake, everyone will have. So limit your caffeine intake. Even chocolate has a caffeine, okay? So alcohol intake also, you can reduce it. Do not overuse medication, because for a simple pain and everything, no, without trying a relaxation, we directly go for a paracetamol, we directly go for some pain medications. So we can avoid that one. And remind yourself, for working all the time does not mean that you're making a best contribution. No, it's not like that way. Even 5 minutes work you are fruitfully doing. So that is what the thing. So you are working all the time, it is not making your best contribution, that you understand. And communication, it is very, very essential. So here the communication is split, but I want a good communication which is continuous. Okay. And for a healthy diet, what you can do, eat more fruits and vegetables. Choose whole grains over refined grains like maida and all, you avoid. You go for a broken wheat kind of a thing. Eat smaller portions, means small frequent diet. We tell for a patient, even we can take small frequent feeds, which should have a well balanced one. Means protein should be there, fat should be there, and carbohydrate should be there. And replace your saturated fat with unsaturated fats. So the oil, whatever we use, that should be from a good source. And limit foods that are high in fat and sugar and salt. Yes, sugar and salt always bad for our health, so we can avoid those foods. And already I told, limit alcohol intake. Awareness, even the hospital people should take some initiative, create awareness about safe patient handling, techniques. You suppose means the nurse. I have seen one of my friend who was working in that area. Even though she had all those measures to maintain body mechanics and everything, she was well informed. But no, I'm a superhuman. I can lift like that way. She lift, and she had a back strain. So creating awareness about safe patient handling techniques, competence-based employee education and use of safe patient handling and mobility devices, creating awareness about ergonomic factors, creating awareness about physical health and well-being, and designing modern and ergonomic workplaces for nurses. All those things are actually equally important for maintaining this one. The other intervention, I follow this 10,000 steps per day. Count your steps. Yes. Put a wristband, or else download an app in your mobile phone. When your mobile phone is in your body, maybe in a coat or else in your pouch. So whenever you're walking, it's counting your steps. So 10,000 steps per day will improve your physical health. Appreciation note or display. Yes. In a ward, a nurse did a good job. Why can't we display her photo or else a thank you note in that? And small get together. Small get together, yes, maybe a month in. So we can have a small get together in the ward and we appreciate each other, how we did well like that way, voicing out collectively instead of you're going and always fighting in the nursing superintendent office or else you're going and asking. Instead, you collectively bargain and creating forums. You among you create a group, and well informed group means you can post some good online materials. By that way, everyone are well informed, involving in public issues. Yes. Without your involving in public issues, nobody is going to notice you. So involving in the public issues, any issues happens, as a nurse, what we are going to do like that way, we should actually come on. Scientifically equipping yourself. Already Madam Rogini said that research as well as this one is very, very important. Similar way, scientifically equip yourself. Talk and write for your right. Yes, talk. Always you talk about your right. Similar way, you write about your right. Take home points. Take care of yourself, eat healthy, well-balanced meals, exercise on a regular basis, get plenty of sleep, give yourself a break. Talk to others, avoid alcohol and drugs, take a break in the events because I told no, too much of work is not that you are putting 100% in that one. Recognize when you need more help, always. So this will help you to maintain your physical as well as mental health. If problem continues in your physical as well as psychological, better you talk to a psychologist, a social worker, or a professional counselor, or even a doctor. You can talk. So conclusion, employee wellness is the key. So your health is the key to improve that or else overcome the challenge. So what I personally believe, I'm telling to you are also self-care. So you take care of yourself. By that way, you can overcome whatever challenges we are facing in our day-to-day nursing career. So self-care is a very, very important thing. And one more thing is self-love. You love yourself and you take everything for you. So the investment, everything for you, your self-care. So that is what the thing we can strategy technique we can use to overcome all the challenges, physical as well as mental, and we can maintain our good mental well-being. Thank you. You have any doubts, you can ask me.
Yes, thank you, Kavita. And it was a very good session. And you had given a lot of points. I think all our nurses will take up all these points, what you have given them to maintain their psychological, physical well-being. And I have given me also a few tips how to make them happy. That was very good. I think the questions, again, we have received few questions. I'll be discussing at the end of the third session.
Okay.
Yeah. Next, we'll move on to the last session of the day, clinical governance. So the past two presentations, what we were seeing was about the challenges which we face as nurses. And now we'll be moving on to the clinical governance, which is an opportunity for nurses. And it's the opportunity for the nurses from leaders to the bottom line. I think this is quite a new thing for all the nurses, and I thought this should be given to you at this moment. Governance to leaders. Yes, clinical governance leads in a primary care trust, which plays a crucial role in embedding the pursuit of nursing excellence within their healthcare organization. This is very important, right? Because I'll tell you what is this clinical governance. And if you're going for nursing excellence, this is what is expected, right? Everywhere, every hospitals are looking for the best nurses who can perform excellently with all the clinical indicators doing good, so that the healthcare organization comes up well. So with this, how can we do this? For here comes the role of the clinical governance. Next slide. So clinical governance is a way of making sure that everyone who passes through the healthcare system is well cared of, right? Or a system that enables the staff to work in the best possible way and staff performing to the highest possible standards. You can note two things here. One is we should have a proper system where a staff can work to the best possible way, right? So our systems itself should be strong enough so that there are no errors happening in the hospital when the staff is performing her duty. Second, we should have provide the staff to perform the highest possible standards, right? The staff's performance should improve by itself, whereas where she is always having a standard of care while providing care to the patient. So why we need this clinical governance in nursing? It ensures that every frontline nurses and managers are members of governing bodies such as boards and is accountable to patients and community for assuring the delivery of healthcare services which are safe, effective, high quality and continuously improving. You know, the consumerism, the demand has come up very high, whether it may be a government, corporate or semi-corporate or semi-private. So everywhere we have consumers around us who always are ready to charge at us if you're not going to provide them an optimal, safe, effective quality care. Okay, everything is available in the social media. Like, for example, a person comes with a cough right now, a cough fever. Immediately, the persons will tell, yes, it might be a COVID infection. So that much facilities and materials are available in the social media. So everybody knows what's happening. So when they come to a hospital to us, and if you're not even checking a temperature for them and simply give them a paracetamol, they're able to tell us, yes, this staff nurse or this hospital didn't provide me a proper care. They simply prescribed medication which are giving up without even checking my temperature. So it's very simple. So who is the person who's in the front line to answer this patient there? It will be the nurse. Everywhere it is the nurse who answers the patients in the as in the frontline warriors. So this governance is very much important for us to see that to face the consumers and also to build up a very good organizational culture wherever we are working. What are the aims of this governance? Yes, it raises the patient satisfaction, improves collaborative relationship and efficiency within and across clinical teams. As I told you the example, the initial example, a patient who comes to you, the hospital days of 7 days, day 1 to day 7, a nurse is taking care of it. Definitely, the patient, even though there may be some mild complications or few morbidities, the way the patient has taken, be well looked upon, they may be very much satisfied. Okay, they'll tend to overlook certain times. Second is improve collaborative relationship and efficiency within and across clinical teams. Only if we have a good governance and systems in place, we will be able to have a good collaborative team working, because a healthcare team is always a teamwork. It is not an individual based work. So we have to collaborate with all the doctors and other support staffs. And definitely for this, governance is very much important so that we have a good relationship and thereby the patient care is being improved. Increase job satisfaction for professionals. Yes, when you have good standards of care, when you have good protocol set up, when you follow the protocols, there is no error happening. Automatically, what will happen? You don't have any scoldings or any shoutings from your superiors. Automatically, when you go home, you are happy. Next day, you come happily to the job telling that, yes, my systems are in place and I know how to work. There's no going to be any error, so I'm going to be very happy. This gives you a very good job satisfaction, which is more than the salary what you draw. So this is governance which helps you to improve your job satisfaction. Improves clinical outcome. Yes. A patient who comes for a surgery for 7 hospital days, by your very good management, clinical management and nursing management service, you're reducing the hospital stay of the patient from 7 days to 3 days or 4 days. That is a good clinical outcome without any temperature, post-operative complication. The patient goes out, bid you goodbye. That's a very good method, and thereby the clinical outcome improves, and this itself is going to draw in more patients to your hospital, and also you are going to propagate your work. These patients who go out are going to propagate that, yes, this hospital nursing care is very good, so you can also go and get yourself treated there. Reduces significant events. Yes, By this governance, we are going to reduce significant events. For example, a patient who is there in your ward continuously, the patients who have you were admitted from the, probably May 10 to May 15 will take up. The patients were admitted during this time all had temperature rise in their temperature. Okay, as a clinical governance is there, you can identify what is the reason for the rise in temperature. So probably it would have been because of a proper disinfection of thermometer, or the improper carbolization, or some sort of bad infection control practices which was existing. Thereby, you can identify and reduce such significant events so that the morbidity of the patients will come down. So what is the core attributes of this governance? Core attributes, if you take, there is 4. Okay, one is norms. What do you mean by this norms? I think all of you are aware. We have now bedsore. Bedsore, to prevent this bedsore, we have one protocol being devised, isn't it? So, for example, the patient who bedsore comes, how frequently you have to provide the back care? How are you going to follow the back care procedure, right? How frequently you have to put up the positions? What are the diet you recommend for the patient with this pressure sore? All these are put up as a protocol. This is what we call as norms. Okay, we have already set up the protocols, and which is in the form of norms, right? Do I have the positive attitude to follow these norms and follow this protocol, or still I'm going to be negative? Okay, this patient already he's having a COPD, already she's 65 or 75 years old. How much ever I'm going to provide the skin care, this patient is not going to get rid of the pressure sore. This is what is the attitude. No, that attitude should be changed. Third is the behavior. Right? Behavior is not while providing skin care, it is not for a namesake or namke was you do the skin care. You you apply the principles of skin care and provide a back care massage and do it with a dedication. This is your behavior of the nurse. So the norms are in place, that's protocols in place. Then you have a positive attitude that we will do my best, and you behave also in such a way that it is not for your superiors to watch you and tell you that whether you're doing a procedure properly or not. It is by virtue you yourself behave as a very good nurse and you provide the optimal care. All these 3 things will foster to champion to culture the high quality care. Yes, when all these 3 are present in a nurse, this nurse will become 2 nurse will become 3, 4 nurse. So they automatically will become champions in that hospital to nurture and culture the high quality care. There's no way where the quality of care will be compromised. What is a clinical governance framework? Okay, so important things. I'm not going to go into all these details. The important among this clinical governance framework is there should be some accountability, and there should be transparency in our account. This is what's put up in the top and the bottom, right? So who are all involved? The stakeholders, systems and process which are existing, and the learning and sharing, improving quality of care and excellent outcome. These are the outcomes and these are the demands. So among these demands and the outcome, what are the things as a nurse we are accountable to do? We should have a good risk management system. We should have a good clinical audit system. We should improve our clinical competency. We should reduce the complaint and complement ourselves. Service users and staff experience should be well established. And whatever protocols are put up, we should be knowing how to comply with the protocol. We should not deviate from the protocol. The best example again here will be, you receive a patient in a EMS. Okay, you have to draw a sample for a blood grouping, right? The protocol is that you first take the patient's name, generate an identification, and then paste the sticker on the sample collection tube, note for what test is to be taken, go to the patient's side, draw the sample, finish up the sealing, send it to the sample to the lab with the request, right? So this is a protocol. When you're compliant with this protocol, you're not going to miss anything. You're not going to create any patient identification error. Got it? So this is the first circle. So because of this, what are you doing? You are able to reduce the risk which is available, which is going to happen for the patient. In case there is an identification error or some risk or some infection control practice which has led to the risk, how are you going to manage? Okay, for that also a nurse is accountable, for which we need to have a clinical governance. Periodical clinical audit. We have lots of audit being done. Okay, how many pressure sores are there? How many phlebitis we have? There has been established in the ward. Okay, how many ventilator associated pneumonias there? All this you do a clinical audit. So when you say that in my critical care unit, there's a lot of ventilator associated pneumonia, automatically you have to work on like maybe my proper method of providing an oral care is not good. Okay. So that is one, again, governance. Then clinical effectiveness. Thereby, when I find that the WAP number is reduced in my ward, it shows that my clinical effectiveness and clinical competency has improved. Okay. Next, one other component of this clinical governance is a complaint and complement. Yes, always don't say complaint that this is not there, that is not there. Whatever is there, effective, cost effectiveness, with that, how effectively I'm going to work. And always compliment yourself like, yes, there was not enough materials available, but whatever available materials have recovered this patient. Compliment yourself for that. Okay. Service user and the staff experience, right? So who is the service user? The patients are the service users. So what is their feedback and what is your experience with such patients? For example, now we are facing the challenge of the COVID patients, right? What is the experience of a COVID nurse who has taken care of a patient with a suspect COVID or a positive COVID patient? Okay. And what is the service user's feedback on how the patient nurse had provide care for this patients. Okay. So all this you analyze, and automatically when you take up the accountability of all these, definitely you're going to improve the quality of care, and also there's going to be a clinical outcome. And this, all these 6 circles put up here, everything is going to be transparent. We are not going to hide anything. Everything is going to be transparent. So when we maintain both this, we are going to have excellent outcome. Just a moment. Yeah. So this clinical governance is an umbrella. It covers all activities and helps sustain and improves high standards of patient care. And that is why always we have staff nurses as the first point of contact. Okay. I'm talking about the bottom line nurses. They are the first point of contact for any issues related to nursing care, performance, quality, etc. Because it is the bottom line nurses who are always round the clock with the patient and who is always involved in patient care activities. And they are the frontline persons who always work for the continual quality improvement. So what are the opportunities a bottom line nurses can gain by this clinical governance, right? I told you what is a clinical governance, isn't it? So by this clinical governance, you are only going to do all the clinical quality indicators, isn't it? So you update your knowledge in how to collect the quality indicators. For example, when you take up a phlebitis, you take up what is a phlebitis scale. So you know what is there in a phlebitis scale, how to look in for a phlebitis. You take up a wound, you take up again wound scale. So you're updating yourself how to collect, how to look for the improvement of the wound, how to improve, see the improvement of the pressure sore, how to improve the incidence of MRSA patients. So all these, by this way, these all were not in your theory. As Dr. Rohini said, it was not there in your theory, but now you have updated yourself. So these bottom line nurses, when you update yourselves through this, you can raise your voice out to the physicians telling that because of this only this has happened. See, I have the data. Okay, so that's one way. Second is critical thinking. As I told you, one particular ward with the days of 1 week, there is a rise in temperature for all the patients. That's again a critical thinking and decision making way the bottom line nurse can tell to the doctors or to the clinicians itself. So there is something we have to look into. Only this time the temperature rise is taking place. So what can be done? Next, improve the clinical competency and minimize the risk, right? So when you found the same example I'm quoting once again, if you found that the temperature was rising, probably you have to improve the clinical competency of how to disinfect the thermometer or use an individual thermometer, or how to do a carbolization, or any infection or any practices which you have done to the patient, how it has to be improved. Probably the hand washing was not done properly. So thereby you are minimizing the risk. So again, you have an opportunity to voice this out. Then you will also get an appreciation from the team leader. Efficient risk management. Efficient risk management, the best example will be this COVID season, right? Yes, we are in the COVID pandemic. How do we efficiently manage the risk of exhausting the PPE? Everywhere there is a demand for the personal protective equipment. Only if you had thought how to prevent this risk of having the exhausting of PPE, you will have a judicious way of using the PPE. So you can devise a guidelines, and this nurses can tell, no, this procedure only will be providing PPE. This procedure can do with a normal surgical triple layer mask. So like this, you can keep on telling. which will help you efficiently to manage the risk which may be foreseen in the future. Next is the bottom line nurses in the wards only. They are only, the in charge only assigns the patient assignment, and every nurse has to have their own plan of care. So for example, nurse X is assigned patient 1 to 5. So 1 to 5, a proper assignment has to be done. For the next 1 week, the same nurse will take care of the patients of 1 to 5. So there is a continuity of care. So when you do this, automatically, you will know what is the progress of the patient, whether the patient is deteriorating or whether the patient is having some problems, which can again help you to do a clinical decision making. Design a governance model of nursing care which includes quality and cost-effective measures. Okay, since we are working in a semi-private hospital where there may be patients who are having who are affordable patients and non-affordable patients. So with this, you can design a governance model of nursing care, how to reduce the cost but provide a good quality care. The best example here I would quote is like we have different number of antimicrobial agents and and medicines to provide the skincare ointments to provide the pressure soak care or a back care. But as a cost-effective nurse, what you can do is a simple emollient coconut oil with your 5 strokes of massage is going to improve their skincare. You make this as a practice in all the areas, thereby the risk of pressure sore itself will be decreased, and there is no necessity for having extra other medications. Okay, so such sort of protocols and models you have to develop. This can be taken up in a medical ward where there's a lot of CVA patients. For them, right from the day one, you start using your coconut oil as an emollient, right? So this is one of the governance model which a in-charge nurse can take, a bottom line nurse can take, or even they can voice it out to the superiors to take up this as a model. Proper adherence to protocol. Yes, when we talk about proper adherence of protocols, we have given you the systems. It is a bottom line nurse who adheres to this protocol. For example, which I've told you, medications to be given at 9 o'clock. At 9 o'clock, correctly, that patient assigned nurse has to give the medications. That is a protocol. After giving the medication, she has to give a document in the record. Okay, and the medication should be given based on the 5 rights of medication, and the patient has to be consumed to the should have consumed the medication. This is your protocol. After consuming, you document it. But if you're not going to adhere to the protocol, again you're going to cause error. So hello, there is some disturbance, I think. Okay, yeah. So when a nurse properly adheres to this protocol, okay, automatically she herself can minimize the risk of the patient, and that also she will be one key person during rounds to be voice out that this patient medication was given, but still the patient is not doing well. Okay, so that is one. Clear roles and increases accountability and negligence. You tell nurse X is responsible for looking into the crash cart drugs. Nurse B is responsible for looking into the inventory control. Nurse C is responsible for the equipment functioning. When you give a clear role assignment, that particular nurse is accountable when a defibrillator is not working, when an infusion pump is not working, that nurse who's there only is accountable. So when you put up that accountability, automatically the negligence will come down, right? When you have an accountability, automatically the negligence will come down. So thereby, because that nurse assignment is already there in the record. When something is not functioning, automatically you're going to catch up that right nurse there. So when you maintain this accountability and minimize the negligence, automatically your role is going to have a clarity, and definitely that is one another opportunity where your inputs will be taken up by the clinicians. Yes, this nurse is always accountable. So I will ask her only what happened to the patient from her rather than asking my junior doctors. Okay, clinical leadership. Okay, to take up a clinical leadership, it's not always necessary you should be a postgraduate or you should be a doctorate. Clinical leadership is by virtue by experience and the knowledge what you have. So when you take up the clinical leadership, automatically, a very simple example, when you go for rounds, when the doctors are asking you about the patient care areas, when you are able to tell it up with your clinical experience and knowledge, automatically you will get a pat at the back. Next time when he comes for rounds, he will only watch for the nurse to give up the answer rather than his junior doctors. Okay, So these are the opportunities when you take up a good clinical governance by the bottom line nurses. Definitely, if you have this clinical governance, you can also voice out your role and your importance among the doctors. For the middle level managers, how are you going to improve your clinical governance and how it is going to help you? Yes, as middle level managers, for example, the nursing supervisors, you are the key persons in auditing the pressure ulcer phlebite. They only give you the data, but you have to audit and analyze, isn't it? And you are the person who obtains a periodic nursing feedback from the patients and nursing feedback from your own peer groups also. Your ward assigned nurses, they feedback how they experience, what experience they feel while providing care to the patient, what challenges they face while providing a care to the patient. All this has to be obtained by the middle level managers. And evaluation of evidence based practice. Okay, as I told you, this coconut oil is one evidence based practice research article is there. You have put up that you can find out whether this coconut oil reduces the risk of developing pressure ulcer. So you are the person who can evaluate, and that is through that you can set up a protocol that in our hospital we'll be using only this as a baseline emollient to prevent pressure sore. Risk management, you have to look in for the incidents and near misses in your wards. So you are accountable to collect the information, analyze it, and put this back across to your bottom line nurses, and thereby you can tell that here this incident has occurred and these so many number of near misses have happened. How are we going to improve ourselves? You sit and devise your own ways of managing or minimizing the risk. Okay, design different ways of monitoring nurses. Yes, what is this different ways of monitoring nurses? Yeah, you told a patient is probably a patient has come with a CVA. Yes, okay. That patient has an indwelling catheter, right? When you go for rounds in the morning, probably the nurse said, yes, have you provided catheter care? Yes, I have provided catheter care. So instead of asking directly the nurse or the patient like this, whether this nurse gave you the catheter care or not, you can look for the tray, whether it is there or not. For the catheter care tray is used, it will be put up there for washing. So this is a different way. So when you find like that, automatically the next day the nurse will say, no, even if I tell the patient, I prepare the patient to answer, she may find out in this way. So it is the middle level managers who have to find different ways of monitoring the nurses, because every nurse is also smart and everybody is becoming smarter and smarter. So to minimize all this, we have to find out different methods. Monitoring protocol implementation. Yes, this we call it as nurse champions who monitor hand washing, infection control practices, whether the 5 moments of hand washing, whether they're doing or not, the NA-based protocols, everything has been there. But again, the middle level managers are in a position to monitor all these protocols, whether it is implemented or not. And these nurses only are responsible for performance appraisal of their ward nurses. The supervisors, they have to provide a good performance appraisal based on their skill, knowledge, and the criteria what they exhibit in the patient care. Okay, enhancing the clinical competency of nurse and nursing care satisfaction. This also, what are you going to do to enhance the clinical competency? It is not that always a middle level manager goes and shouts to the nurse, why you did this, why you did not do this, why there is a bleed here, why the phlebitis is there. How are we going to teach that nurse and how improve the clinical competency? That also, at the same time, you have to ask the patient like what are the satisfactory levels based on the nursing care provided. So how to improve the nursing care satisfaction. Okay, and now again a biggest challenge is how acquire skills to handle different people. Every nurse is not the same. Every individual nurse is a different nurse, isn't it? So each and every, how to handle a nurse who's very sensitive, how to handle a nurse who's very prompt and very fast in observing things, how to handle a nurse who's very slow in observing and acquiring skills. So different strategies have to be followed. And supportive role, we cannot be only always supporting nurses or supporting only patients. Example, a diabetic patient who's always craving like, yes, I cannot eat with a low sugar diet, I cannot take up, I need something to take up. You have to be strong there, telling that no, what my nurse says right, I will not give you a sugar diet because you are a diabetic patient. Okay, this is the instance where you have to support the nurse. Sometimes a palliative care patient is there who's almost at the end of life care. There a patient is asking for a candy or a chocolate. He might be a diabetic. There you can support the patient, telling that it's based on that will and wish of the patient because he's already a palliative care patient. So we can provide it. So supportive role for both patients and nurses. So this is what I tell you. The all what I've told comes under clinical governance, right? When you are doing this clinical governance using all these examples like auditing, periodic nursing feedback, etc., you can voice it out again to your higher level officials or your superintendents. Like these are the problems and these are the methods how we can provide, minimize the risk for the patient, improve the safety of the patient, improve the quality of the patient care in my ward. Okay, this is the role of the middle level managers, and this is how when they practice this, they can clearly within evidence voice out that this is what is happening. So how are we going to it? How can I correct it? They can voice it out. Nursing administrator role is a very important integral part in the clinical governance, and they always have to see that there are suitable mechanisms existing to govern the nursing service. So automatically all the formulation of the department vision, mission, and there is a lot of committee, nursing committees, NABH is instructed to provide more committees, feedback reviews, analysis, quality indicators, etc. So many is there. So all this will be taken up by the clinical administrators, but at the same time, the clinical administrator, nursing administrator, should see that the governance, what she has taken up, the system, what she has put up, the data are in her hand, and this can be projected up to the management committee itself, management head itself, stating that this is the quality of nursing care were provided in spite of the patient's deteriorating, we should analyze for some other reasons. Okay, or this is what the reason the patient's morbidity has improved. We have to improve in these lines. So when you have all these in your hands, when you take up the clinical governance as a tool in your hand, you have a lot of voices to raise up and tell that this is what has happened and this is what I'm going to do to improve the quality of patient care in this health sector in my organization. As administrators, always go for innovation. Okay, I think what we are doing today is one of the innovation because of the situation we have brought out this innovation, isn't it? Otherwise, we go for a traditional class. So always encourage right from your leaders to the bottom line nurses to bring in innovations like how to go with the NABH. They have to have some accreditation process, how to put them in research in terms of clinical governance, how to improve their skills using skill training sessions, okay? And what are the protocols and methods available to improve the patient safety. It's not necessary always we have to follow the protocols which is already followed in some of our hospital. We have to sit and work out our own models and our own protocols which fits into our patients and our demographics. So on the whole, to summarize, you have a lot of ample opportunities with the clinical governance in your hand, and that is the need of the hour. It was, though this clinical governance evolved in the year of 1990, now almost all hospitals are taking up this role. Hello? Yeah, almost all are taking up this role, right? As care providers, you can have a very good clinical governance. As educators, you have the role of education and training. As patient advocates, as patient manager, and also not only patient manager, ward manager, as a collaborate with other healthcare team members, as a single sole leader in your ward level, as at the floor level, and as at the administrative level, and also as a researcher, you have ample opportunities to voice out for nurses and to reach your nurses' voice to the top level. This clinical governance is a very good tool. So it is not only the leaders have to use it up, it is right from the bottom line. The top level nurses can use clinical governance as a model to raise their voices and voice it out to the management and to the healthcare. And this voice is only to improve the patient care and the quality of patient care. Transformational leadership, whereby a leader seeks to empower people under him. Hello? I think there's some disturbance there. Yeah. Yes. Transformational leadership whereby a leader seeks to empower people under him is an ideal form of governance in health sector. Yes, any leader who takes up a transformational style, transformational style who always take time to empower the people under him. It is not that a good leader works very well only in her presence. Even in her absence, the work should go on well. So that's possible only when she empowers the people under her. Okay, that is an ideal form of governance. So this type of governance only creates an atmosphere where all people work together for the benefit of the institution, and also patients would enjoy better healthcare service. For this reason only, I have put up the thing like This clinical governance is not only for the leaders or the administrators, it is right from the bottom line nurses to up above the hierarchy to the top level leaders, right? Then only we can establish a good patient care, and the patient who comes to our hands will be safe and will have provide a good patient satisfaction feedback. Clinical governance is nursing place to maintain a high standard of clinical care. Okay, nurses are in forefront in patient care to promote quality care to patient at all times. It is not only in COVID times, but we are only always in the forefront. It is always everywhere told that we are only 24 hours round the clock. Even robots comes again, we are there to even function the robots. So this is what is going to happen, right? So with this, we should take up the clinical governance as a tool in our hand to slowly put up throughout our voices, a collective voice to everybody that we also can improve and take up a very good frontline role to promote the quality of patient care. With clinical nurse, governance, you, the nurses at all levels, can voice out to lead the health sector. Finally, if not you, then who can? Because you are the nurses who are strong and powerful force to, it's not come back, to face back any challenges it comes in your way. So dear nurses who are listening this webinar, please, it is not again a leader who has to take up. Everybody, every nurse has a leadership quality in her. Okay, take this clinical governance as a tool and take it as an opportunity to voice out for nursing. Thank you. Yes, back to the participants. You can throw your questions if you have any. Yes, we have received few questions from Dr. Rohini's session. How do you involve nurses in your setting for research activities? In your setting, how do you involve nurses?
Am I audible?
Yeah, yes, yes.
As discussed by Dr. Kavita, actually they are facing a lot of problems, physical and psychological problems. So independent research work, when any staff nurse is taking up that, we really encourage them to do it. If not, at least as a department, when we are undertaking a research project, we make sure that they are given an opportunity to involve in the research activity. Maybe if it is going to be like trained data collectors, there are various research studies where we can use trained data collectors to collect the data. So in such cases, what we do is we recruit at least the volunteers who are willing to collect certain data from the patients. So with their volunteer participation, we make them to, we allow them to collect the data. And in some cases, if they are really interested, they are, we add them along as a co-author. Okay, so that whatever is their portion, if they are suitable to that level of authorship, definitely we take them into consideration and we do encourage them. So I think it's too much on departmental research projects. I think to begin with, we can start with a departmental research project and then slowly empower them so that they'll end up with as a very good independent nurse researcher. Sometimes it is really encouraging to see some certain articles which is being written by nurses, which is being published in Nursing Journal of India or even in Indian Journal of Continuing Nursing Education. So we do encourage them, but to begin with, it is always a part of a research team, and then it depends on their interest.
Yeah. There is one more question for you. Few nurses, what they have told is, my senior nurse is not initiating any teaching to me. Okay, how can this be addressed, or what are the strategies to take it up?
Yes, actually, this is a very down-to-earth problem because it doesn't happen in all institutions, but in some institutions, we don't get adequate support from the organization. Maybe it is from the department, or sometimes it is I'm very sorry to tell, even from the nursing service side, we don't get much support in order to do this, but it doesn't always happen then, but sometimes it is a rare occurrence. So what is my suggestion is, if your departmental in charge is not encouraging you, why don't you empower yourself? Because we all are matured people, we all have undergone a very good training program, and now we are employed as staff nurses. If you can get an opportunity to attend a continuing nursing education program, take a leave if possible and then go and attend that CNE. And I'm even aware that Tamil Nadu Nurses and Midwives Council, they are conducting a lot of CNE programs, even for renewal of registration. So take up such things. Okay, it's not that always we should begin with the sky. You can always start with the ground, and then one day definitely you will be reaching the sky. So definitely what I believe is that none of our talents or hard works are going to be dormant always. There will be a time when everything will spring up like anything. So keep on, you keep doing your good work. At the same time, as and when opportunities are coming, please enroll yourself for the CNE. Nowadays, even in online, we have a lot of research activities and a lot of training programs available. Enroll yourself, certify yourself, and one day definitely you will be at the top. Okay, so encourage yourself, empower yourself, as Madam Kavita told, have self-love, and above all, I believe in God's mercy and wisdom. Okay, so when everything works together, definitely miracles will happen. So keep striving. Don't stop just because somebody else is not encouraging you.
Thank you, Dr. Rohini.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, it's for Dr. Kavita. There is one or two questions over here. One nurse has asked, my superior is very egoistic. Okay. How to overcome this? Because she has put up it straight away. I don't want to put it up straight away.
Okay.
She's very egoistic and always scolding.
Okay.
And when there is always a conflict between two supervisors. So I'm in between.
Already two supervisors are there for one nurse.
How to overcome this? Is it causing stress? How to overcome this?
Okay. See, when a situation comes that you cannot avoid your supervisors, better you give them, like if at all she is telling like she is the boss. Okay, you are the boss. I respect you. I owe you everything. Like that way. In that way, you are not hurting her ego. So it goes smoothly. It runs. You know your self worth. So you empower your self worth. By that way, you can avoid the conflict with the seniors. Because most of the time the seniors believes that they are the superiors and they are the god, like that way. Okay, give them the position. So the problem is solved.
I hope the person who has raised the question has got the answer.
Yes.
Okay. Now, one more question is from the supervisor side. Yeah. How to improve the cooperation among my ward nurses? I bring in lot of methods, but there is no cooperation. Any strategies from your side to improve the cooperation?
Actually, I mostly use this technique with my kids. Actually, when you are giving an option, always give 3 options which you have chosen, and you ask them to select one option. So definitely they are supposed to choose from one option. That option also yours only. So by that way, the supervisors can give like I'm giving 4 options to you. You choose one. So ultimately they will choose any option which was given by the supervisor, one option which they like. By that way, the supervisors can control even the juniors.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. Now it's my question.
Yes.
You were talking regarding this personalized staff welfare.
Yes.
Can you tell what it is? What do you mean by providing how to go about with this?
No, staff development program. We know that we will conduct every month like that way. But some of them will have their personal some sparking point. So they may be having maybe a dancing queen, or else they may be a singing stars, like that way. So when you are actually including a staff development program, so when you know their talents by a list, or else by their intro, or by this one, so you can plan a staff development program personalized to their view. It is not that the essay can be on bedsore also. The essay can be on quality of nursing care also, like that way. So why can't we put it in that way? So they will also improve their whatever the qualities, or else we can say that their own talents. By that way, we are actually getting our works also done like that. So this personalized staff development program, why I'm saying means we have one in JIPMER. So in that way, we used to think, oh, these people are very old, how are they going to do like that way? But they are the champions of football, they are the champions of balls. I'm saying about the nurse who is going to get retired by this month like that way. So the personalized staff development programs actually gives them the opportunity to overcome their barriers and come out with their talent. By that way, it will get their skill also improve. The similar way, we also will be giving them the program like that way. Even we have one more staff development programs. Personalized one means people who are very much interested in a particular area, they will be given that chance to project their talents. So by that way, both the way we are served, like that way we are having actually personalized staff development programs.
Okay. I have one more question for Dr. Rohini. What about your comment on your integration of nursing? So you told you had come from CMC, you had that integration already there. What about its scope now? Integration of nursing service, educators taking up the role in the service side.
Can you please repeat it? I didn't get it.
Yeah, you have come from, graduated from CMC, where you follow a integration of nursing service, isn't it? What is the scope of doing that attitude of the educators now to come to the service side? Out of your experience, I'm asking.
My experience, personal experience from CMC Vellore was actually, it was something very wonderful. I thought it would be actually very simple to implement this dual role in any setting like ours. But later on, I understood that there's a lot of problems that has to be overcome. Personally, when we studied in CMC, the main advantage was that our own nurse educator, our own person who is taking class in the classroom is going to be the head of the department of, say, medical or surgical nursing department in the hospital. So we can find that the power of a nurse educator over the other, nursing service people, as well as even other fourth class workers or even other office staff. So they definitely, that contribution is given by the dual role, because we feel proud to walk in the department of when we go to the hospital, because these teachers who are taking classes for us, they are very aware of what is going on in the clinical area, who are the most sick patients in the intensive care unit, who are the most challenging patients lying in the ward. So they are aware about each and every patient in the department, plus each and every staff who is working in the department. So a lot of respect, though it is much to do with a lot of hard work, but still hard work always reaps. So the same way we have seen that the respect given to a nursing teacher in the hospital is beyond words which I can describe in this panel, because it was really very nice. We can really think about integrating nursing service and nursing education, though there are a lot of challenges. I think now in India, many hospitals have come forward for this twinning program at their own level. I think St. John's Bangalore has taken up an initiative, and they have already started this twinning program. Even in other hospitals, at least at a primary level, slowly twinning program has started between nurse educators and the clinical environment. Definitely it will benefit, because nurse educators having very good knowledge, if they can be given some authority and power over the clinical area, it is not whether nurse educator is bigger or a staff nurse is bigger, but ultimately the profession, the significance of nursing in front of other medical professionals or in front of other healthcare professionals will definitely be high. And together, I think it will be a very good initiative if it is being.
Okay. Any more questions? Yes. Okay, then there's no more questions. Other few questions have come up asking the same type only. So that's already been answered by both of you. So I don't want to again while away your time. And once again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank both of you. Actually, I had approached at the last moment, and you were ready to accept our invitation and readily accepted to give your deliberation also, which is very, very useful for all our nurses. And I think this is the first time we have conducted such a program for the clinical nurses. So I really feel proud of it to have hosted this. And thank you so much. And wish you all a happy Nurses Day. And we wish to see you in many more ventures in future.
Thank you very much, Professor Kripa and Dr. Kavita, for sharing and giving me an opportunity to present in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Rogini and Madam Kripa, for giving this opportunity. And it was a wonderful session, and the pleasure is mine also, because I had a chance to interact with you people after a long time.
Okay. At this junction, I also would like to thank my team over here who are also helping with all these technical aspects. And actually, they have all started up working only right from yesterday with this new thing, and they have done it successfully. All my team people, Mr. Kishore, Mahesh, Ms. Prema, Monica, and Suganya. I thank you so much, and I think this was a successful one. Thank you. I hope we can close the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
கொன்றுவாங்க